presents Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland. We're streaming out live to Facebook Live and out to Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. Joining us tonight's guests are going to be Chad and Alta Dillard. They wrote the book Orbducted. I have that book hidden right downstairs. I've been reading it like halfway through. Man, these are like the perfect guests for a Paranormal Soup show because, Paranormal Soup, read all things weird and unusual, UFOs, cryptoids, Bigfoots, all kinds of weirdness we cover on the show. Well, these guys, their life, it's not just an abduction that happened to these guys. There's a lot of weird, high strangeness. Probably not enough for even one episode, but we're going to get to some of it tonight, and I'm sure we'll probably have it back on again. And, of course, the way to call in this show is the Soup Live Chat, 800 Live Chat. That's the only Skype call-in line tonight. We only have the one. That's the video Skype call-in. It's Soup Live Chat, 800 Live Chat. And then, of course, what we're going to do every Sunday is World Wide Web of Weird. All right, guys, we'll be with you in just 1 second. To another night of Paranormal Soup. I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight, like I said, we're going to have Chad and Alta Dillard on. They wrote the book, Orbduction. Sounds weird like abduction, but it's an orbduction because a big giant orb took them and another friend on an unusual trip. And a lot of other weird, high strangeness. I've been reading their book. So we're going to talk about that tonight. And like we like to do every Sunday night, it's weird. Before we do, though, we got our panel. Let me see. I think somebody just joined here. Let me see who we got tonight. Jamie, how you doing tonight, Jamie?
Hi, doing good.
And then I see we got Mr. Rob Autry. How you doing tonight?
Doing good. How's everybody else doing tonight?
Doing good, a little bit tired. I got to get up early tomorrow, so this is going to be a rough night for me and a rough day tomorrow, but it's worth it. I've been wanting to have these guests on. I love giving. We had Bruce McAfee on last week talking about aliens, more like about UFO sightings, pretty serious, straightforward. This is somebody's experience, and it can get kind of crazy. It can get kind of unusual what these people talk about when they're going through these, what they call high strangeness in their lives. But man, it's interesting, and I've had my high strangeness in my life, so I'm open to believing what people tell me. They don't, why go through all that and make it all up? That's what people, why would you do that? Some people do, but not everybody does. So have an open mind tonight. These guys had some incredible experiences. I can't wait for them to share with us. And of course, like we like to do every Sunday night, is a World Wide Web of Weird. So let's go ahead and get that rolling. Tonight on the World Wide Web of Weird, we're going to start off with some delicious food ideas for you. This comes from Unexplained Mysteries. I've done talked about some pretty gross stuff. I talked about the meat genetically grown on a stick. But there's another thing coming because, I'm saying there's too many people trying to eat hamburgers in this world. So they got to come up with a new way, new kind of burger. So this new burger is an insect burger. This comes from Unexplained Mysteries. Insect burgers to go on sale in Switzerland. Insect-based edibles are beginning to appear in shops after recent revisions of food safety laws. They might not be the most appetizing of foodstuff, but scientists are looking increasingly towards edible insects as an environmentally friendly way to help feed the world's ever-growing population. Despite their small size, research has shown that pound for pound, insects such as grasshoppers, mealworms are actually an incredible good source of iron. Oh, and I forgot to put up my screen share here for Jeff. People can see it, actually. And for people listening on Late Night in the Midlands, this is a webcast as well. But you can you can watch these videos. Some of them are videos that are up on my World Wide Web of Weird playlist on the Paranormal Soup YouTube channel. Or you can watch it on Facebook later. It archives up there right away, and on YouTube in a couple days. You'll see what we're talking about. These articles, too, you can find. This is from unexplainedmysteries.com. Despite their small size, research has shown that a pound-for-pound insects such as grasshoppers, mealworms are actually an incredibly good source of iron and protein compared to regular meats. Now, in a bid to capitalize on this potentially lucrative foodstuff, Switzerland has become the first country in Europe to authorize the sale of insect-based foods for human consumption. The country's second-largest supermarket chain has started selling insect burgers, and there are plans to bring several more insect-based delicacies to the market in the near future. At the moment, only crickets, grasshoppers, and mealworms are permissible. However, it is possible that this could be expanded upon further down the line if the idea proves popular. Whether anyone will actually want to eat these particular products, however, remains to be seen. I don't know. I'd try a chocolate-covered grasshopper. I can do that. I'll try it. I haven't. I'd try that. I don't know. Like a whole mealworm hamburger. I mean, I just.
Yeah, it's kind of gnarly.
Yeah, would you rather, if you had your choice, you had to choose one or the other, would you try the mealworm hamburger, or would you try the genetically grown hamburger, the meat grown on a stick kind of deal?
The mealworm hamburger.
You would choose mealworm over the genetically
Probably
modified?
so.
It's from Mother Earth. Yeah, I can see that. At
I've,
least it's
I've
from
eaten
Mother
a
Earth.
mealworm before, so.
Yum. All right, next up on the World Wide Web of Weird. This one, I saw a lot of comments on this. This has been viral. This was on Fox News. This comes from the helenstales.wibbly.com. UFO flies in front of Capitol building in Washington, live on Fox News. While watching Fox News on August 14, 2017, a resident of Rolling Meadows, Illinois, witnessed and recorded an unidentified flying object that flew in front of the Capitol building in Washington. You can see this. It looks like a Frisbee to me. And I saw people commenting that, too. And other people are like, you're an idiot. It's not a Frisbee. It just doesn't look like, if it's anything, it doesn't look like it could be that big. Because it looks, the perspective of it looks, this camera's far back from the Capitol, It looks like it's a Frisbee to me. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an expert. But this was pretty viral. I don't know. I mean, I think if I was watching this on Fox News or something, I would, pull out my phone and hit the DVR and rewind it. and check that out again. I definitely see it's noteworthy, but it was probably a Frisbee. I don't know. Like I said, it's just my opinion. But it was pretty viral. People were all kinds of talking about it. I just don't think anything like that's flying that close to the Capitol building, like in the middle of the day, without a lot of other people noticing besides, Fox News didn't even notice. They had their camera on it, and they didn't even notice. So. All right, next up here is, this one's scary to me. This is from the dailymail.co.uk. Is that music tracking you? Hackers can remotely hijack smart devices and use sonar to record your every move. Smart devices such as Google Home and Amazon Echo can be transformed into surveillance tools that track your every move, according to scientists. The covert brand tracking system uses built-in microphones as receivers to pick up reflected sound waves, and is so powerful it can record what you're doing through a wall. The smart device then transmits this information to the attacker, who could be a few feet away or halfway across the globe. I'm not gonna read the whole
I
thing.
already knew about this stuff,
that's
and
what we're
people
talking about.
thought I was so paranoid for bringing it up.
Well, researchers at the University of Washington, they're the ones who did this. They decided, let's test this, is what everybody's talking about, as a danger of the Amazon Echo and even smartphones. And they want to show, is it real? Can somebody really use it to basically make a sonar, get information through sonar in your house, through these devices, and they proved you could. So if they could easily do it, a university, the NSA, the CIA, all the big alphabet agencies are doing it already.
I don't even leave the Echo plugged in, just on its own all the time anymore, unless I really want to listen to music or do something. I just don't trust it.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. All right.
Yeah, mine came on last night. Just,
yeah?
randomly came on, and I was like, Alexa, why are you spying on me? And she's like, I don't know the answer to that.
Just like, who do you work for, Alexa? Do you work for the CIA?
No, she says, I work for Bing or whatever.
Remember we did that on the World Wide Web of Weird where it shut off? You'd ask the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, I don't know. I mean, are they doing it? I mean, not that I'm planning any terrorist attacks, so there's not much for them to hear on my end. It's a bunch of kids screaming half the time.
Just data collecting. For whatever reason, just data collecting.
I guess so. All right, next up, this is from Unexplained Mysteries. Black mist filmed in a haunted hotel room. Paranormal investigators caught footage and a phenomenon at the Magnolia Hotel in South Texas. Paranormal enthusiast Bill Driver and Mark Morrow, whose investigation series Strange Town can be found on YouTube, has been trying to capture evidence of ghosts when the anomalies occurred. The room, which is known as the Campbell Room, was named after James Campbell, the original owner of the property. Legend has it that he was killed by Comanches back in the 19th century, and sightings of his ghost at the hotel have been widely reported by visitors ever since. The new footage, which can be viewed below, shows a strange mist-like phenomenon that can be seen fogging up the lens of the camera several times throughout the 2-minute clip. Whether or not this constitutes evidence of a haunting, however, remains a matter of debate. There's like a little shadow off to the left, too. I don't know if it's pixelation. I don't really know. It seems odd. Oh, everybody in chat's telling me to turn my volume up. All right. I thought I sounded low tonight. Hold on.
You don't sound low on my end, though. But you were low when you had the other music playing.
Yeah, it's something with I don't know. Maybe I need to change my battery in my device because there's a setup I got. Maybe during a commercial break I'll do that.
That sounds better now.
Do I sound better now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for whoever just texted me. Thank you. I don't know. Okay. So, back to where was I on this? All right. So, yeah, Black Mist. I don't know. Could be pixelation. I'm not sure. All right. Number 5 on the World Wide Web of Weird is, all right, this comes from Daily Mail as well. This is key to treating PTSD. Incredible new technique could let you erase selected bad memories. We all have bad memories. We'd like to not remember, of course. But I find this concept really dangerous. The technique allows researchers to selectively erase particular memories using light. While it has only been tested in mice so far, the team believes that it may offer new insights into how PTSD and specific phobias may be better treated. Researchers found in the University of California, Riverside, developed the technique which weakens connections between the nerve cells involved in forming certain memories. To survive in a dynamic environment, animals develop fear responses to dangerous situations. But not all fear memories, such as those in PTSD, are beneficial to our survival. For example, while an extremely fearful response to the sight of a helicopter is not a useful one for a war veteran, a quick reaction to the sound of a gunshot is still desirable. In the study, researchers found that fear memory can be manipulated in a way so that some beneficial memories are retained, while others are too detrimental to our lives and are suppressed. Dr. Wan Hong Cho, a lead author of the study, said, in the brain, neurons communicate with each other through synaptic connections in which signals from one neuron are transmitted to another neuron by means of neurotransmitters. Yeah, we know this. We demonstrated that the formation of fear memories associated with specific auditory cue involves selective strengthening of synaptic connections which convey auditory signals to the amygdala, a brain area essential for fear, learning, and memory. If they could just... you could just erase your bad memories. Do you learn, do you still keep the lessons you learn from? Because a lot of those bad memories, to me, have lessons in them. Things you learn, I should never do that again, or I should never trust that person again. You can't, I just don't see how they could just erase memories and how that would be good, even if they are bad memories. I guess I understand the whole PTSD. I could see it being used just in maybe that scenario.
But then all the consequences, everything else that goes with it is just gone.
Right. That's what I'm saying. We learn from our mistakes, and bad memories are a part of those, I don't know. I can see why they want to pursue it for PTSD. I get it. But I just hope they don't go any further with that. But what come on in and get rid of those bad memories, you can see that.
What if they took the memory of the guy that tried to knife you, they took that knife moment out. Then you're la-da-da down the street and you walk up to the dude and then you don't even remember he's serving you a latte and you don't even remember he's the guy that tried to knife you in the head or something.
Got ready with PTSD, but now it's 50 first dates every day.
Exactly. Groundhog Day.
Are they saying I sound better in the chat room now, by the way? Or louder?
I think so. Mine's jumping around. I'm trying to get back on the other device.
I hope
Yeah.
so. Yeah, I
Better,
thought
Jason. Yeah.
Okay. All right, one more thing here. Two more things here. This is another scary thought. I pulled up the wrong article. Hold on. You thought messing with our memories is a bad idea. How about giving robots guns? We had that Russian robot on here that was shooting handguns. Well, now drones. This one's on Unexplained Mysteries as well. U.S. firm develops drones with guns and grenades. Duke Robotics has come up with a weaponized drone capable of aiming and shooting while in midair. The TIKAD drone, which won an award for security innovation from the U.S. Department of Defense, has been hailed as an important new tool in the war against terror. Capable of being fitted with either a gun or a grenade launcher, the drone can be remotely controlled from a safe distance, so it can enter dangerous combat scenarios without risk to the operators. But just how safe is this drone like this, and what would happen if it fell into the wrong hands? Big military drones traditionally have to fly thousands of feet overhead to get to targets, but these smaller drones could easily be flown down a street to apply violent force, said Professor Noel Sharkey, a robotics expert from the University of Sheffield. This is my biggest worry, since there have been many legal cases of human rights violations using large fixed-wing drones, and these could potentially result in many more. There's always fears that ISIS could get a copy of this technology and create their own killer drone. I don't even know if it would be really that hard, for them to come up with that. It takes money, They could probably come up with a killer drone of their own pretty easily. We already know a lot. Islamic State is using drone laden with explosives to kill people. See, just get a remote plane, strap some bombs to it. As long as it can carry the weight, there's your drone. It's a scare. I think fine, as long as humans control them. Don't give them AI. Don't give them to Skynet. That's what I think when I think about drones with guns. All right, and relating to this, the last article, the World Wide Web of Weirds from Daily Mail. This is another along the lines of what the heck are we doing? Terminator-style killer robots with the ability to heal themselves. Move one step closer thanks to synthetic skin that can repair any damage. Cutting your hand, tearing a muscle, even breaking a bone are all injuries that will heal over time. Now experts have created synthetic skin that aims to mimic nature of self-repairing abilities, allowing robots to recover from wounds sustained while undertaking their duties, like your duties to kill a bunch of people. That's what I think. Further developed, the technology could also allow Terminator-style robots built for battlefield to repair damage they sustain in combat. Exactly. The better to kill you with. I feel like we're heading towards the Terminator apocalypse. I guess that was the theme of the last couple articles here. But, I mean, what are we doing? Are we, seriously asking for, Judgment Day Terminator style to come? I mean, just think... just think, everything that's going on right now in the media, like Charlottesville, we're all fighting each other. Just like Reagan said with the aliens. Well, imagine how we'd all come together if all of our robots turned against us. Racism would be gone. It'd be all hatred for robots. Let's stop the robotic apocalypse, people. All right, guys, we're going to be coming back here after this short commercial break. You won't hear any audio on the Facebook end because we play music out the Late Night in the Midlands radio network, which I'm playing right now. But you will see the Please Wait. We'll be back. We will be back with our guests Chad and Alta Dillard to talk about their book, Orbduction. We're going to talk about their abduction experience. All right, guys, I'll be with you in just a few minutes. All right, tonight, I hope my volume's better. I was really low. I think my battery's going out on my interface. So I hope I sound better. I sound better, Rob, if you're there, Jamie? Do I sound louder?
I think you sound...
I hope so. Well, let's get tonight. We're going to talk to our guests. Hopefully my volume's better. People let us know in the chat room. Jamie and Rob will relay it to me to let me know if I sound better. Sorry about the beginning. I should have replaced that battery. I think that's what it was, because I can even hear myself that I sound louder. All right, guys. Tonight, Chad and Alta Dillard, we're going to talk about their book, Orbduction, taken in Louisiana, Night in the French Quarter. So I've been reading the book. It's really interesting. They got a lot to tell tonight, so let's go ahead and get to our guest. All right, you there with us, Chad and Alta?
We sure are, and thank you so much for having us.
We're here.
Yeah,
we're
you're
here. Thanks again for having us.
Do you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
You sound perfect.
Well, I guess I was really quiet at the beginning of the show, and so hopefully I'm louder. I don't know if anybody's relayed that in the chat room. Jamie, are we sounding all right?
Yep. 3 people have said you sound good.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I played a longer commercial break. Sorry to bring you on so late, guys. I had to switch out a battery. Okay, I guess we're gonna play the long song right now on the radio network. So, all right. Well, guys, I told a little bit of people. I've given them just a little bit of a hint of what it's all about. And there's a lot to your story. You describe it as high strangeness in the book. Tell people. I don't know where you want to begin with this story. I know there's a lot to it, but I'll leave it in your hands.
Well, all right. Chad is nudging me, so I'll begin the I'll begin the process, and I just, to me, it just makes the most sense with what is going on in our world to kind of begin in the beginning, and the beginning in my case is in the late 50s is my birth, and my mother, who has crossed over, would share a story in my youth. Not a lot of times, because she was extremely guarded about her past. There's a lot of mystery in my mother's past, and ultimately I have a lot of mystery in my past. But just to kind of frame our events, my mom indicated that I'm raised mixed American Indian from the reservation area of Arizona. And my mom claims that when I'm about 6 months old, which would make this, as I said, in the late 50s, she claims that while she's driving the car and I'm the only passenger in the car, she's driving across the desert. Now, I have no idea any more information than what I'm offering to you. And again, my mom not physically here, and I have really no other connections to any other family besides Chad. I have no other way of, at this point, filling in any more blanks, but my mom indicated that as she's driving, it was during the daytime, and she said that she'd either use the word a small metallic craft or a UFO came down out of the sky, and she said stopped her on the road. Now,
wow,
that was right. That.
And what year was that?
Nice,
when did that
well,
happen?
I'm born. Right, I'm
Roughly.
born in 57, so it would have been the end of 57 or the beginning of 58.
Okay.
And so anyhow, I'm sorry that I don't have any more information than what I'm offering. But again, I feel it's important from the perspective of trying to understand, at least try to grasp what we're trying to grasp,
reading your book. Reading your book, I haven't gotten totally to the end of it yet, but it sounds like you are still trying to come to terms or try to understand. There's you call it high strangeness is a perfect term for it. So many. I'm not going to give it away. I'm going to let you tell it tonight. But there's so many factors in your story that like I said at the beginning of the show, this is paranormal soup. My logo is an alien, a Bigfoot, and a ghost, and you got all 3 and more in your experiences.
Right.
So
right. It's a beautiful. Chad and I just both really enjoy looking at that picture because it's as close to making almost sense in a world that we are, as you understand, still trying, I'd say daily, sometimes minute to minute, to understand. So anyhow, that would seem to be, if one believed my mother, I certainly did, but I did think she was crazy, like absolutely crazy, when she would say something like this. And I was young enough where it embarrassed me so badly that I'd just disappear. I would move out of the room and get away from it because it was something not only did I not have interest in, but I couldn't believe it was coming out of her mouth, and I felt embarrassed. And so, but keep in mind I had no interest.
Right.
And so that's very important from our perspective as far as I'm concerned. I've never had an interest in this area. And not that I was not a believer, if you will, but I just didn't have an interest. And so it wasn't something I chose to hear anything about, so I avoided it at all costs. And now I'm sorry because I don't have her here physically to ask about it. But so this seems to be our beginning, or at least my beginning in that arena. And then we'll have Chad share with you, his memory, his childhood memory, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. My kind of, I guess, high strangeness, my first event that I remember is my dad was a farmer in Arkansas this would be the late 70s or mid 70s. He early 70s. I was, I guess, 7 years old. So yeah, this would be 71. And I remember him and my grandfather and my uncle, and I saw it also afterwards, but I remember them talking about these 3 burnt circles out in the middle of one of the fields that had, I believe, soybean in at the time. And these circles were perfectly round. They were about 12, 15 foot in diameter. They were, spaced evenly apart. There were 3 of them. And I just remember them, being very confused on what the hay happened, So that was kind of my first kind of paranormal thing. There was a couple of other things that happened to my dad and my dad's second wife, my stepmother. And they had some really crazy, kind of more ghost poltergeist kind of stuff. But so, I was kind of familiar with odd things happening, but again, I wasn't into it. I wasn't,
Right.
deeply, put into it.
And I wonder. You talk about when you were only 7 years old, but do you remember? Did they have any discussion like, was this a UFO or anything like that, or?
No, just more confusion, like
Right.
what happened. How, I mean, and they'd been farmers all their life, and my grandfather, he'd been a farmer all his life. So, and this is something he had never seen before. So
it's weird. Both your parents have these UFO experiences. They didn't see a UFO for Chad's case, but the indentations of what might have been, and your mom sees a silver disc. You guys, you talk in the book too about how you felt like being brought together was high strangeness in itself.
Right. I've always, and it's me in particular, between the two of us, I have always said, I've always used the word arranged in regards to Chad and I coming together originally and then ultimately marrying a year after we were arranged. And so there was so much involved in that over a relatively very short amount of time. I'm not sure how much detail you'd like on any of that, or, I'm not quite, I just want to make sure that with the time allotted us that, we're covering what's most important to you.
You know your story better than I do. I haven't even finished the book yet, so I'll let you be the judge of what you want to give out. When I talked to you guys before the show, and I even said it at the beginning of the show, just reading this book, I know this is almost probably part 1 because there's so much to tell. You guys have so much.
Right.
I mean, I'm just amazed by every story. And you say in the book you were edited down. There's a lot more of what's in the book.
Right. Oh, right. Right. And thank you so much for mentioning that. Our intention absolutely is because first of all, our intention was never to write a book or necessarily even go public with any of this. That has been a huge challenge just in its own making. But when we ultimately have, done so with this book, it was a 20-plus year experience of our life together. And the editors chose to edit the book basically down to around this, what they considered the main event of the title of the book, or Abduction in the French Quarter. So, there seemed to be a poll taken on it, and people seemed to be in agreement of it, that the book would be in the source that what you've received. And so there's just so much more.
Oh, yeah.
And, covering all this enormous array of, again, the term I've borrowed, high strangeness, referring to anything paranormal. And so, yeah. Well, in the beginning then, with Chad and I'll just go ahead and start that process, and then you guide me if,
Okay.
you'd like me to move on, or Chad. So this is 1990, Little Rock, Arkansas. I had been coming in and out of the state for several years. I would move away for long periods of time, then I would come back. I used to live on the West Coast, and then I'd come back. At another point in my life, I moved to Oklahoma, Kansas City, and
You're
then
a
I'd
Rolling
come
Stone.
back again. I'm sorry?
You're a Rolling Stone.
Yeah, exactly. I was single. I had never been married. I had no children. And I lived a very freestyle kind of life. And also, again, I had a lot of mystery in my past that seemed to, stay pretty close to the surface with me, always trying to understand and get answers, if you will. Well, so anyhow, my mom had relocated herself to Little Rock, Arkansas, and she became what I define a self-made woman. She was a widow and had started college at 40 back in the 70s, before middle-aged women were basically doing this, and got her degree in, it took her 10 years in pre-law. President Clinton happened to be one of my mother's law professors for a semester, and my mom being mixed Indian, and then having that kind of connection with somebody in politics such as he was, it just afforded her a lot of benefit in being placed in positions in the city and what have you. So when I say self-made woman, I mean that in that accordance. She was a housing inspector, a premise inspector, a environmental codes inspector for the city. So she was well known, and there's a reason for sharing all of that. So I was moving in and out of the state, and at that point I was 33 years old. As I said, never married, no children. Nor at that time in my life did I feel I had a desire for either of them. And so, not that I didn't love love, I've always loved love, but I just was struggling with trying to have a sense of what was going on in my world. So anyhow, I had moved back, and I was staying with my mom. Temporarily. It was just comfortable, and I was staying with my mom. But at that time, my mom and I were starting to have real issues with each other. And one thing was, I was way too old to be living at my mom's house. And, it's very clear and evident to me now. So at that time, I was working in the medical profession, and I had left a hands-on position. I used to work in a field of radiology. That was my last hands-on. I got a job working in medical equipment. Now, I'm a real nimwit, and I honest to admit it, about anything technical. I am clueless. I'm very good hands-on, but, I've never been able to wear a watch. That's been going on all my life.
So you're one of those people that have like the whole electromagnetic thing, like the computers, like
right.
get the blue screen of death the moment you get near. Don't ever come near my computer, kind of thing.
It's honest to goodness, without, and I realize there are many of us out there. I understand.
Report that.
There are many.
A lot of abductees report that problem.
Well, it's been an interesting issue throughout my life, and then my own self-awareness of choosing to be somewhat of a nimwit when it comes to technology. It's almost like I feel like, I don't know. I'm waiting for everything to go telepathic, as crazy as that sounds. But that's really kind of how my mind works. And all this other is just very confusing to me. And again, I've had a lot of trouble with batteries throughout my life. You sound like you're very aware of what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So I get this crazy job, medical equipment. Well, wouldn't you know, I hated it, just hated it from the moment I walked in. Well, I'm only there on the job, I think, about a week or so, and I'm knowing the minute I go in, I shouldn't have done this. But I've kind of locked myself in, so I'm trying to get a grip, and I'm struggling. And my mom and I are really at odds with each other, and it happens to be Valentine's Day. So just building into it, I'm working with a guy by the name of David. David's a young married guy with new baby, and he knows that I'm single, and he can't stand the idea that I don't have a date that day. So try to speed the story up. He decides he's going to make a phone call and set me up on a blind date that I don't want, but now I'm curious because I've never been on one. He makes the phone call. I'm standing right in front of him. He has this conversation with this individual. This individual sounds like he's very interested in me, but he can't make the date because he's working that night. Well, David's real perturbed because, he can't even help me, and he's trying to help me. So that's not setting my mood well. So I'm kind of sinking in my mood. I get off work that day. I know that I don't want to spend Valentine's night with my mom because we're kind of struggling with each other. So I decide to do something extremely out of character. I point that out because to me that's as important as everything else.
Right.
All the out of character. Well, the out of character for me is, and I am far from a saint, but the one thing I don't do, and I've never been interested in doing, is drinking and driving. But now I'm all by myself, and I've made up my mind I'm going to go out and have a drink somewhere. So I changed my clothes. I used to wear suits and high heels and all of that. I get out of that. I get into my casual and my tennies and my jeans and what have you. I get in my car, and now I drive out of my mom's driveway. She lives in an old residential neighborhood, but it's fairly new to her as well. So I don't really know where I'm at. And I decide I'm just going to stop wherever I can find. Well, once I start this drive, I get extremely uncomfortable with this decision. And now I'm really second-guessing myself. It seems so silly, but that's what I'm going through.
Right.
I end up finding this tiny pub, very conveniently, not far from my mom's place. Now, this pub looks as out of place as I am. It's sitting in the middle of this old neighborhood. It looks like something the way I try to describe it, it looks like something out of Europe, Scotland, Ireland, 1700s. I mean, it's old looking. Like I've said before, the only thing it's missing is a thatched roof. And, right, it's tiny, and it's tiny. So it's got a tiny parking lot with no cars there. So I'm thinking, well, this is convenient. Looks safe. There's nobody there. So I go inside this place. Now, it's still light out. Sun hasn't set yet. So it's got to be 6-ish, somewhere between 6:30. I get inside this place, and again, I'm trying not to drag this out so long. Ultimately, I end up having an encounter with a couple of men who come into this place that, again, look so much more out of place than even I do. They are physically very beautiful, handsome, whatever language somebody wants to apply to, gorgeous. This is what they look like. And they're casually dressed, but very expensive. One's blonde, one's got very dark hair. The blonde's wearing a very expensive-looking leather bomber jacket. Ultimately, what I discover out of these guys is that the blonde claims to be the pilot for the private plane of the dark-haired guy. Now, I'm not thinking anything paranormal, high strangeness, Twilight Zone even at that point. I'm just thinking this just don't make sense. This just is weird. And so ultimately they asked me if there's any place else in the city that's more lively, basically. And I'm like, oh my God, to myself, they're not from here either. This is creepy. At this point, I'm kind of thinking this way, but not too much.
Right.
So basically, that's when my lights go out. I have missing time from leaving that location and getting to the second location. Now, if I drank a full beer, I'm shocked because I don't remember drinking. But I do remember losing time from that location to the second location. Now, all of a sudden, I'm awake again. Memory. And I'm with these guys. What's so interesting to me is I'm extremely social, in terms of my personality when I'm out and about and I'm celebrating, I'm partying, I'm what have you. And not this night. My mood is getting worse. Now I'm with these gorgeous guys. That didn't make a bit of difference to me. I was not interested. It just is that weird. I had a girlfriend that I worked with when I worked in radiology, and she lived just very close to this second location. Second location happens to be a large sports bar in kind of the more towards the center of the city of Little Rock. At the time, Little Rock's got close to 300,000 people, so it's not a one-horse town. It's a fairly large city,
Right.
capital of the state, and it's got a lot of clubs and restaurants, needless to say. So, interesting I picked this location. It's a location I'd never been to before. Now, the only thing that makes sense to me is why I did it was because it's in my mom's territory as a premise inspector or zoning inspector. And so I'm knowing that whoever owns these places know my mom. And I'm, moving under that kind of thinking I'm protected sort of thinking. So this is the location we end up at. I got my girlfriend up the street. I know now at the time she's the same age as I am. She'd never been married, no children either. I felt like might be free that night. Didn't have a date. So happens she didn't. I call her up. I tell her all I do is describe these guys. And I swear before we hung the phone up, she's there.
Well,
Right?
The guy has a
Right.
pilot, so yeah, I'm sure. You said the guy.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know, why you weren't
absolutely.
interested is really weird.
Exactly.
This is my pilot.
And she couldn't go wrong either direction, so she wasn't losing out, no way. So, again, back to weirdness on Alta's behalf, I apparently basically get them introduced. Now, I can't begin to tell you these men's names. I have no idea. But get everyone introduced, and then I decide I'm going to bow out. I'm not even going to stay with them. Now, this is just very weird. This is very weird. And so what I do is I go across the bar. I get completely away from them, leave them all happy, playing pool, everybody's happy, and I just remove myself. I go sit up on this, bar closest to what looks like either the manager or the owner. And this guy comes over and starts visiting, and I look just exactly like my mom, so that wasn't hard for him to believe I'm her daughter. And we meet, and I'm trying to, again, be social, but I'm just not, I'm failing. And I'm just sinking in a really foul mood. This place is packed with people and lovers and what have you, and I'm just in the worst of moods. Next thing we know, I'll have Chad pick it up from here so you can hear he actually can talk. He's got a great story to share. So, Chad, if you'll share.
Yeah, I had gotten a call from my buddy David that afternoon, and so he described this young lady, and he wanted me to meet, and I'm like, well, I've got to work tonight, but I'm interested. So, I go on to work, do my shift. I worked at a real trendy oyster bar at the time in Little Rock there. And we did our thing, and all the guys, it was nothing but guys that worked there. And, of course, us working Valentine's, we definitely didn't have dates, So everybody wanted to go play darts. So I'm like, yeah, I'll go. Let's all go, And this was, again, a place that I'd never been. So we went, and it was weird because when I got there, instead of going and playing darts with all my buddies, the whole restaurant was there. It was all of us. Instead of going and playing darts, I go over and play pinball all by myself. And I'm playing pinball, and I play a game, and then I look over, and I see this lady sitting at the bar. So I go up, and I'm like, would you like to play pinball? And she kind of turned her head and looked at me funny. She goes,
Yeah, that's not the best pickup line there, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she says, I really don't like pinball, but I'll play with you. So we go over, and it was Elvira pinball machine, and you'd hit this one thing, and you go, "Don't touch me there,"
That can make it awkward.
Elvira
Could be why somebody hates pinball.
Yeah, it could be a reason why she's. But anyway, we play a game
I
of
used to
pinball.
have that pinball machine.
Oh my
I
God.
love
Really?
it.
Yeah, I actually.
You should have been there.
Yeah, I actually looked a couple of years ago to see if I could find one. I found one on eBay or something like that. I was like, oh, that would be so fun to have.
It's so
Anyway,
But it's the synchronicity. When you talk about this, people's like people that have never experienced this high strangeness, and I'm not an abductee as far as I know, but I've had high strangeness and ghost phenomenon, and I've seen a UFO. But the synchronicities at play, I know that with my wife, that it just the synchronicities that brought us together. I'm not going to get into that, but I know that. But man, so somebody tried to set you up. You both kind of didn't get together on that, but you still ended up meeting up that same night. It was like meant to be. My question is, those two guys, the hints I get to in the book and what you're saying, do you think they could have been? I hope I'm not getting too far ahead, but are extraterrestrial or some divine influence from them? Maybe I'm just watching People on Earth too much. I don't know, but people see that show.
In my case particularly, Chad and I were very consistent in moving in the same direction on the same page, as far as I'm concerned, with our consistency of our experiences and what have you. But I also like for folks to know we're very different as well, in the sense of he has his thoughts, I have my thoughts, and oftentimes they don't necessarily connect. In my regard, so I only speak for myself, I absolutely have no idea. I have no idea. And I have said that from the very beginning. And until they tell me, I have no idea. But I will say this. In reflecting back on all of this, it certainly I'm much more leaning towards, this is what I'm most comfortable with, is certainly otherworldly. Certainly
Seems
otherworldly.
like it. They got your attention. He said his pilot. Well, what's he piloting, an airplane or a UFO? I'm not trying to be facetious or silly
Exactly.
about it. I'm seriously
Right.
my thoughts when I read the book. It's seriously my thoughts when you're telling me the story. When he says his pilot, I'm thinking, really? What kind of pilot are you flying?
And you'd had to have seen this practically thatched roof little pub in this old neighborhood. Where the hey is the airport? Where's
Right.
the airport?
Have you guys ever looked up to see what the closest airport was to that pub?
Oh, there is nothing in that area. The airport was on the opposite side of the city, on the outskirts.
So
I don't know.
why would they be there?
Chad.
Right?
I mean, not even. We're talking lots and lots of miles away.
Yeah.
And the neighborhood was not. It was an old neighborhood, a comfortable 50s neighborhood. Certainly nothing of money where you'd expect a little private airport.
Yeah. Well, if their airport was all the way let's go drive as far as we can and find the crappiest bar. I mean, I do know I have friends that are like that, but they don't have pilots. But
Exactly.
let's go find the crappiest bar. Maybe they drove a while. I don't know, but it just seems really suspicious. And like I said, maybe I watched too much of the show People of Earth because that's what it feels like. But
I've never seen it, but I trust you. Yeah, I mean, again, it's all just so interestingly bizarre to me, and I've never gotten bored with it because, again, it's just such a big mystery to me. If I might add, your lovely word is synchronicities and what have you as well. Just to tie that little story up in a bow, leaving out, other stuff in and it's not for
there's a lot.
So is or is not in that little book. It's a matter of there's just so much.
Yeah.
But just kind of finishing that portion of it up with Chad and I in the arrangement, my interpretation of this being arranged is within 24 hours of Chad and I meeting, under these very interestingly strange circumstances, we discover that his grandfather's first name is Alta, which of course is my name, and his last name is Duncan, and that's my mother's name. That's essentially my name.
It's so weird.
Now,
I mean, it's not like your name's very common at all. It's not a very common name at all. So for his grandfather to have that name, it's so That is high strangeness. It's like synchronicity. You just can't. You just say that. You just shrug your shoulders up and go, "Huh, I don't know what to think of that," but that's so weird.
Boy, I'll tell you. Well, what it did to me is because I was already wobbly as it was in my mood and my frame of mind, what have you, that was enough for me to disappear on Chad for the first 3 months. After that encounter, and I just liked him too much. It was just too much. I liked him a lot.
Too risky.
And I knew he liked me. And if I heard risky, if you said risky,
yes.
Exactly. What a perfect word. That was it. I've never been able to find that word, and that's it. That was it. It felt too risky. I was too afraid because I couldn't comprehend. I already had so much mystery in my life that I could not comprehend this. And so I just bugged out. I disappeared.
I called you a Rolling Stone.
Oh, that was
what
so
a Rolling
perfect.
Stone's reaction is to somebody they really care about. It's like, I'm out.
Oh,
Roll
man.
away.
Perfect, and I sure did. I rolled away, and then it was as if again there was this invisible switch inside of me. Something clicked inside of me, and then I had to find Chad. I had to find him, and I did, and it was long distance. And I had just been in a horrible motorcycle accident.
Chad had been in a car accident.
Long
all
distance
around the same time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
within days apart.
Yeah, the day that Chad had just had his bad accident, and I'd found him long distance, and he was all beat up and wounded, and he told me he was heading back to Little Rock within 24 hours. I swore to him that I would be there when he arrived. He made me, I swore to him. I was begging for forgiveness, and I swore to him I wouldn't run again. And on that very day, I went out with a guy friend on a bike, and I had a horrendous accident.
Oh.
And so I'm in the hospital when Chad arrives, waiting for me to show up, and of course I don't show up. I'm missing again, and it's just been one very bizarre, strange catastrophe after another that we
but
still
even through that,
see
you guys still ended up together.
We did. I finally drove up. I got myself out of the hospital. I won't bore you all with all the details. I escaped, and I'm all stitched up, and I'm beat up, and
it's like I gotta go. I have a date. I'm like really late for her.
Exactly. Yeah. I've got a date. I gotta find him. He's never gonna believe this. And I come driving up, and I, we come together in a really bad movie, all beat up and stitched up and.
You know what I want to say to you guys on that, though? It's like fate put you together, and you guys still didn't get together. So it's like, if you're going to get together now, we're going to make it hard for you.
That's right.
Definitely.
You're not a kid. That's just, it's hysterical now when I think back about it.
So you guys, started dating after all this, I am going to move it along here because I know we do have limited time, and there's a lot more high strangeness. We're going to like I said, there's a lot going on here. So you guys started dating in that, and eventually you find your way to Louisiana.
Exactly. I'll have Chad pick it up from there. Now we're in Chad and I married in 1991, a year later, and now it's 1995, and my mom had moved to Louisiana, invited us to come to Louisiana, so we weren't far behind her. We relocated to Louisiana in 1995, and I'll have Chad share with you what happened to us once we got here.
Yeah, we had we hadn't been here long, and we were going into, we kind of lived rurally, so we decided we were going to go into town for the evening to have dinner. So we get dressed and we go, and we just getting into Hammond, and there's like a Walmart shopping center, and right before the Walmart shopping center is kind of a bend in the road and these big pine trees. And when we get around these the bend in the road and these trees, we both kind of look up in the sky on the right-hand side of the road, and there's this massive craft. And we both look up at it, and Alta kind of looks back at me. I look at her. I look back just for a short, just to make sure I was seeing what I thought I saw, and then I focused I just focused right back onto the road.
It's kind of like I didn't see that.
Yeah. Well, it was like, okay, if we don't acknowledge it, if we don't see it, it won't know we saw it. It won't know we're here.
Won't
Where do you
see
think
us.
you get that
but
thought in your head
this
like
thing-
that?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't say that out loud. I
Right.
just said it in my
Just your
head.
feeling.
Right. And, because this thing was huge. I mean, it was bigger than the Walmart and the shopping center and the parking lot all combined.
What shape was it? I'm just curious because I saw my only UFO I ever saw was that big. It was no lights on it, and it was rectangular, shaped.
Well, this one was rectangular, but it wasn't as wide on one end as the other. It had 2 or 3 lights in the front, 2 or 3 lights in the back. It just and the sky was still light. It hadn't gotten dark yet. It was still it was early dinner time, and now I didn't see anybody else noticing it or pulling over to the road and pointing in the sky or anything
But there were
like
other
that.
cars and people around. Were there
Right.
possible
yeah,
witnesses?
there's dinner traffic. There's
But they
people
just didn't seem to
driving.
notice the huge UFO in
Yeah.
the sky.
Right. And
Well, you hear
I mean,
this.
it
You hear
was-
these. This is for people that are not
That's
familiar
right.
to the UFO subject. I'll just interject here. This is a common experience. Some people believe there's stealth technology. You can take pictures of their ship, but the thing is, they do things where they can affect your mind, and you won't see the UFO. But some people they can't affect, and they'll see it while other people don't. It's a theory.
Right.
Right. And now there was either a write-up in the newspaper or on the radio the next morning that there were other witnesses. There had been reports of strange objects in the sky, and
Which, of course,
So-
confirmed for us what we didn't need confirmation, nor were we interested in confirmation over, that was really there.
And yours was in '95. This was in
This was in
1995.
95.
Mine was in
Right.
1998, so it wasn't too far from you.
Wow.
wow.
In
Well,
97.
and
Probably
what they
97.
call our main event was in 97, so very interesting.
Yeah, 1997 is when I saw it. Actually, I think about 98 is when I graduated. It was right before then, so it was still 97.
Wow. Well, so this is, in essence, as we now repeat and share the awakening, but we went back to sleep immediately because this was not an interest on either of our parts. Just for folks that are listening, we had no interest in this area, either one of us, in sci-fi. And this, Chad maybe a little bit more than I did, but I had none. And so this event, as far as I was concerned, was a non-event, but that's impossible because I went into shock. Now, as I have said to others, Chad describes that very calmly. My head immediately flipped away, and I'm looking at Chad, staring at Chad, silently begging him to tell me that is not there.
Right.
And, of course, I'm looking at his face, and I can see in his face that's there. But that's not there. So my brain exploded, and I never looked back. I never turned my head back
So
up
you just
to
looked at
it.
it that one time and you turned away from it?
Oh, boy. And, I mean, I did it instantly.
That
I
seems subconscious.
I remember having that kind of an experience.
See, that makes me wonder, like what happened to you in your childhood.
Oh,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because that
again,
typical
lots of mystery
abductee
back-
response. It's like, I don't see that. Nope.
Right,
'Cause they-
I didn't see that city floating
Mhm.
above us. No, that's not there.
It's like
Well-
you've been programmed to try to ignore it.
Boy, gave it everything we had. And then, so, of course, as Chad said, it gets reported. We take note of that, but that's enough of that. So we never discuss it. Chad, do you ever remember?
No.
I never remember us discussing this. And so now we'll just kind of move us ahead now. We move, Hammond, Louisiana is, I don't know, just a
Yeah.
guesstimate an hour outside of New Orleans. we moved from that area very shortly after this experience, and we moved to the French Quarter. So just to frame that very quickly for you, Chad and I moved to the French Quarter extremely naive. Please, people, remember, we're very naive. And on many levels, we'd never experienced voodoo before, or hoodoo, or werewolfies, or Santeria, or any of that. You know, I'm an Indian. I mean, I come from, got my traditional regalia, and I'm not raised with the people. My mother raised me around the world, but that's my world. And Chad's from Arkansas, and just kind of a very typical growing up in his life, comfortable life. And, this is just, we're not familiar with this stuff. And so we end up moving to the Quarter, very naive, and it's much more expensive than we anticipated.
Oh, yeah.
We were not prepared for that. So thank goodness we were young and naive, because we're just we're in it to win it. So now that's in 95. And as they say, everything imaginable, paranormal, high strangeness was seeming to happen to us, and it was amping itself up. It was happening constantly in the form of ghosties or time slips or all kinds of whatever you can imagine. You didn't know if somebody was really a vampire or not. They certainly thought they were, and we weren't questioning them. We just would avoid. We'd just kind of move.
We're talking
in
about
these
the age
very
of vampire interview with a vampire in New Orleans, and during that time. So yeah,
right. That's when we moved here. They had just finished all that filming and what have you. So it's like, well, now, so we're pretty fascinated back then. I'm not so fascinated anymore, but back then we're, again, fascinated. So, but the experiences that are happening to us vary between terrifying, fascinating, boggle the mind kind of events to lead us into 1997. So now we've had 2 years or so of getting ourselves acquainted with the Quarter, and the Quarter getting acquainted with us. And I think, and I liken it to, we were making our way quite nicely. I was becoming established in what I did, and Chad was certainly becoming established in what he did. And life was looking quite sweet. And we got away from the voodoo stuff and all of that. We were able to move away from that into
you lived above a like a voodoo location, like it was like a voodoo temple, right? I remember from the book.
Temple.
Yeah.
Right. We lived above the authentic voodoo temple that had been built, or at least those locations, those structures were from, we understand, the 16 or the 1700s. And with all that energy still existing, thank you for bringing that up. We'll just mention very briefly here that we lived there in 95. We discover that in 10 years later, in 2005, a young couple that lived in our apartment had a horrendous event where he killed her.
I know that story. That's that apartment?
That's our apartment.
Oh, my God. Sorry, yeah, I interrupted you, because people probably don't know that story, but I do know that story, yes.
Right, it's become quite famous, we discovered.
I don't remember their names, but I remember the story.
Zach and Addie.
Yeah.
His name was Zach, and her name Addie. And so that happened 10 years after we lived in that apartment. And now Chad and I have just returned to the New Orleans area after being gone since 2001, so 15 years. For us to return the year, we come back this last year, and that apartment burned down. Right. The temple was burned down.
Yeah, the whole building.
The whole building, right.
Except the outer.
There was this really interesting story, too, because they were like there during the hurricane.
Right.
That's right. They became infamous, if you will, for refusing to evacuate, and they hung. And it was a perfect experience for them because they were both very good partiers, alcohol and drugs, and so it became their world through the evacuation and what have you. And I understand they were doing very lovely in that experience, and I understand also seemed to be very well liked and what have you. And then after life came back, reality hit them, and apparently things went real haywire. Obviously, real haywire.
People can look up that story. It's an interesting one. We'll get back to yours, though, because it's even more interesting. We are coming up on a commercial break here in a second, but I kind of want to lead in. We're going to get into the incident. This was in 97, right? The main incident that happened in the French Quarter with the book's titled of. What are we going to be looking at when we come back from commercial break when we talk about this? Because it's pretty incredible.
It's pretty incredible. It sure is. We'd like to share with you all whatever, again, time will allow. And it is about 3 people being taken off of a street corner, and all 3 having a very separate experience.
Well, when we come back from commercial break, we're going to talk about that. After commercial break, too, we will open up the Skype line chat. But if you call in for questions, make it one question and try to make it short, because this is an interesting story, and I want to try to give them enough time to talk. But please, if you got a question, call in the show. Well, I'll give you the Skype ID is Soup Live Chat 800 Live Chat, and I'll give it again when we come back for break. All right, guys, be back with you in just a few minutes. Tonight's guests are Chad and Alta Dillard. We're going to be talking about the abduction in the French Quarter. Really interesting to me. Their story. We're only getting a little snippet of the story tonight, and I highly recommend you guys get their book. We'll get that information to you tonight, how you can get their book, or abduction in the French Quarter. It's so much high strangeness, so much weirdness that most people, I think, if they were to make up stuff, they would stick to, I was abducted by aliens. It wouldn't go off and all these weird synchronicities and experiences just can't explain or put your finger on. So that's why I find it so interesting. You guys can call in if you got a question about their experience we're talking about tonight, but let them tell a little bit of their story before you call in. It's the Soup Live Chats 800 Live Chat. That's the Skype ID. Type the whole thing in. Soup Live Chat 800 Live Chat, and you can Jeff, our engineer, will bring it onto the show. Make it one question, make it a short one, and we'll see what they have to say. All right, guys, let's get back to our guest. You still there with us, Chad and Alta?
We are here.
We're here.
All right. So where we left off, we were talking about this. We're getting up to the incident in 1997, the abduction. So I don't know which one of you guys wants to start with that, but it is definitely the highest strangeness in your experiences.
Well, Chad's pointing at me, so I'll start us off, and then we'll hand it back to Chad. So 1997, I, just for the perspective of the story, at that time I had just turned 40. Chad was 30, and our friend that is known as Christine in the book, she was 24 at the time. She was and is still a friend to us, long distance now. But at the time, she was a new hire in the shop that I worked in. And from the moment we met, it felt, I like the term familiar. She felt very familiar to me, as if I'd known her before. And it was just a nice connection right from the beginning. And she's tall, slender, long blonde hair, a very gregarious personality, loves to laugh, and she loves humor, but she also has a very strong nature to her as well, of what she considers right and wrong. And I always appreciated that in her. And anyhow, but not a drama queen under any circumstances. She my mom had passed on my birthday in May. Yeah. And my mother had just come to visit prior to this and was planning to move to the Quarter. We were 24 hours to move her there, long distance out of Little Rock, to move to live in our courtyard. I'm sorry, just so I don't sound like I'm jumping around. My mom had lived in Louisiana and then left Louisiana when Chad and I decided to move to the Quarter and went back to Little Rock. Now, at this point, my mom's health is fairly poor. She loves the French Quarter, so we all want to be closer. So we've got this perfect life planned out. She's going to come for my birthday. Well, it wasn't meant to be. That's the day she passed. And so people who had met my mom knew that she was a native mixed woman, elder, highly respected. She's a very loving being, and people truly cared about her. And we're very sad to learn that she had passed. So now we're 3 months later. It's now September. Our friend Christine had asked me if I wanted to go out and have dinner and drinks that night in the quarter. We'd never done it before. So I accepted. Chad and I only lived at that point a couple blocks from our shop. So we called Chad, and Chad came and joined us. Everything's on foot in the French Quarter. It's about 13 blocks. And so you stroll on foot. And so we decided to have a very spontaneous night. We're going to leave the shop all on foot. We're just going to cover the quarter. We're going to start at one end and cross and just stop wherever we cared to. None of us had children. We didn't answer to anyone. So again, just very spontaneous. From the moment we started our evening, when we stepped outside the shop, when she locked the doors, it was around 9:30. I remember very distinctly feeling like the energy was off. Now, I don't know how else to describe that other than to just remind people, you know your environment. And if it feels different, you know that. And somehow or other, I took note of it that night when we started our night. The others agreed with me, but, not a lot of conversation. I wasn't thinking paranormal, high strangeness, just this is weird. We headed down towards the famous Bourbon Street, and that's where we were going to start our evening from one end to the other. Now, again, just for the time's sake, there's a whole lot in between the story, but we crossed the quarter. We've stopped at 3 different locations, and each location, we're discovering there's no people. There's no patrons. If there was restaurants, there was no wait staff. There were no customers. Every location we stopped had one person, what appeared to be a human, either a manager or a bartender. But, that was it. Now, there's not even very many people on the streets. As I often use the word stragglers, there were a few stragglers, but it was, where is everybody, is my language, what I kept saying. This is weird. And so this is unheard of.
And we even had stopped at a couple of the local places, not just having to rely on the tourist part. We had moved on to the more local places where the local, if the tourists aren't partying, the locals are,
Right.
But not on this night. Everyone's missing. Everyone's missing.
It's hard to picture the French Quarter being empty at any point.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And so, if the streets are empty, the bars certainly aren't, the restaurants, what have you. Well, anyhow, on this particular night, this is the way it's going down. So we make it across the quarter by the 3 of us collectively remember is 11 o'clock. So essentially we're out there an hour and a half, and we like to point out, again, consistently, no drugs, nor did there appear to be anyone around to drug us.
Right.
Nor did we drink. So this is all beyond sober and conscious.
Well, it sounds like you guys are just kind of wandering one place to the next, trying to find somewhere something's happening.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, we're trying to find a place to party.
Right. Right. And I've always said, our preference would be that somebody drugged us. This would give some explanation to pure insanity, because we don't have explanation. Other than what we're sharing with people that are kind enough to hear us, this is all we can offer, is what we've experienced. So, as I said, we're on that last street corner, and it's around 11 o'clock at night. And that's the last thing the 3 of us collectively remember. Our friend, Christine, has chosen, probably very wisely, to never come forward with any of this. She has given us permission to speak on her behalf, but this has never been her intention either, right, nor was it ours to ever be public about any of this. So anyhow, this is the last that the 3 of us remember. Now, I'll mention that, again, for time's sake, all 3 of us seem to have a different experience. Also, our friend had had a very bizarre encounter prior to our night of being taken with what she calls a werewolf. Now, this is not a woman who speaks this way. So I do not doubt her at all for what she said to me.
We got some time. You can't just throw werewolf out there and not let me hear a little bit
Oh.
more.
Well, Chad's reminding me a shapeshifter, a true shapeshifter.
Right.
Okay, so the quick story on this, and I think I can do this quickly. She's, as I told you, she's 24, never married, no children. Very attractive. She's dating this guy at the time named Will. I called him Dark Boy because he was her polar opposite. He was very adorable, but he had long black hair, dark hair that I remember, and he had a darkness about him. He was her opposite. And I just always called him Dark Boy. I mean, I was only around him very little, but she only dated him for a minute. And when she decided that she was ready to move on, she called him over to her house. She lived down at a duplex at that time, and it's broad daylight. She knows what she saw, just like Chad and I know what we saw. And what she saw was he's standing only a few inches in front of her on the porch as she's giving him, I like your butt kind of story.
Let's just be friends.
That's right.
Right.
And she says when we get to about that line, she says he becomes so emotional that it's like it's from the inside out. And she says he turns into a wolf. Now she says, again, she's only just a couple inches in front of his face. She turned her head away in shock, just like I did. And when she told me that part, I knew what she did because her brain exploded.
Psychological reaction. It's just like, this isn't real. Like, I'm going to look away
Exactly.
and look back and it's going to be gone, right?
Exactly. And in her case, when she looked back, he must have shifted back human and then very quickly shifted a second time.
Oh.
Right. When he did it the second time, I'll clean the language up, but her words were, to him, you just turned into a effing wolf. And she said he responded in a very startled tone, you saw that.
Ooh.
Which she didn't need that kind of proof, but
Right.
there you have it.
Wow.
Now, this just happened very briefly before we were taken,
Okay.
like just days prior to us being taken. He winds back up in the story again after we're taken, and then he ends up back in the story again several years later. Fast forward to 2001. I'll leave you with this. I'm told by somebody that this individual is going around telling everybody in the French Quarter he's got to get out of town. He's catching a bus because the aliens are after him. Now, it's just that bizarre.
You would think, hey, I can turn into a wolf, but I'm scared of the aliens.
And I got to catch a bus?
I got to catch a bus.
I mean, it's all just
Yeah.
so
It's a
bizarre.
paranormal soup, for sure. For sure. I mean, aliens going after a werewolf. You know, if werewolves exist, and aliens exist, well, do the aliens know the werewolves exist? Do the werewolves know the aliens exist? Is there a connection? You know, I mean, can all...
It would appear in the French Quarter,
only in
This
New
is all
Orleans.
So
Or
weird.
Florida.
Exactly. Well, so anyhow, all three of us had very different experiences on that night. She had that pre-being taken, then all three of us had very different experiences. I'm the only one, lucky me, that seems to have been returned the next day with memory. And my memory is of in between. No memory of coming off the street, no memory of being returned home. I also seem to be the lucky one out of the three of us that has, I call it an unknown. Others refer to them as implants. I have always used the word unknown, that you have pictures of x-rays of in my upper arm from that event. Several years later, I had another event where I have another unknown in my wrist that won't x-ray, but was detected on ultrasound. And I have full memory of that experience. So, yeah. So anyhow, on that night in 97, if you're interested, or if there's time, Chad has had regression. We found somebody several years later.
Because obviously, for people that don't know or not getting it, they're not familiar with the abduction UFO experience that people reported, you woke up the next day with no clue what happened after 11 o'clock that night. Just you were
Oh,
partying with your
thank you.
friends.
I'm sorry. I just
No, it's all right.
bypassed that.
No, it's because you're trying to be short because we only got like a half hour left. That's my bad, not yours.
Oh, thank you so much.
But
right, exactly.
So regression therapy, hypnotherapy, or is usually the way to find out what happened. So Chad, you went under regression.
Correct. Yes.
So what did you find out?
Well, in my regression, we're standing on this stoop, this last place that that we all collectively remember. And now, before this, Alta kept saying, "I just want to go home. I'm over it. I just want to go home. We've been out here for an hour and a half, and it's just
let's go home.
Just go home."
Right. The party's not
And then,
here.
The party's not.
And that's the last thing I remember. Now in my regression, my memory is we're all standing there by the stoop. I see this bright light coming from around the corner. So I get the girl's attention, and we walk around the corner, and there's this orb, and it's probably it's just this bright, white, beautiful, clean light, just soft.
But a soft light, like you didn't have to shield your eyes from it.
Yeah, I mean, it's bright, but I mean, it's just, when I say soft, I guess, it's just clean, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just pure.
Yeah.
And we sit there for, just a few seconds, and it comes towards us. It's, like I said, it's about 12 foot in diameter, about 15 foot off the ground, and about a half a block down the street. And it just comes to us, and it just engulfs us. It orbducts us.
Yeah. I
So
love that term, by the way.
My next memory is I'm walking down this hallway, this corridor. It's kind of gently turning, leaning to the right. The walls, the floor, everything is metallic gray, very smooth, no rivets, no bolts, no seams, no nothing. I'm following this little being. He's probably about 4 foot tall, 3.5, 4 foot tall, big, gray, bulbous head. But he had substance, He wasn't like the little thin aliens that you see on TV. He had substance. He kind of waddled when he walked. He was kind of dwarfish, where he had,
And was this one blue?
No, he was kind of a pale gray.
Okay, a pale.
And I only saw him from behind. So, because I'm following him down this hallway, this corridor. I guess out of the corner of my eye, I could on my left, I could see a tall blonde female walking beside me. Now, this does describe our friend that was with us that night, but I did not turn to see if it was her.
Right.
My next memory is I'm in this room, and it just seems infinite. It just seems like it goes on forever. It's very dark. I can't see the walls or anything like that. I can see my immediate, and then off to my left, I could see a tall blonde female laying on a examining table, and there were 3 beings around her. Now, she was nude, but she was censored like they do on TV, to keep the people from seeing body parts and stuff, on like regular TV.
Right.
And there's these 3 beings around her, one on each side and one at her head. Very tall, like 7, 8 foot tall, big bulbous heads, almond-shaped eyes, kind of praying mantis-y looking. Their mouths were really close to their chin. Their arms were kind of crinked like a mantis. They were wearing these black cloaks, like a Grim Reaper without the hoodie. The person on the table never seemed to be in distress or in pain or anything like that.
Were you able to tell if their eyes were open?
No, I can't. No, it was kind of blurred out,
Okay.
from head to toe.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't just their body parts that was censored. It was their whole body. You know, it was just really blurry. I focused my attention back to my immediate. Now look over to my right, and there's this little blue being. And he looks a lot like the pictures on TV, you know, the grays. But he was this vibrant blue.
We got the picture up of the book right now.
Oh, great. Yeah. Yeah. Now, that's the artist rendition. He was a little softer than the one on the book. He kind of looks a little grimace, but the one that I saw was much more softer. You know, he didn't look so scary, I guess.
Right. Okay.
But you know, again, he had the big bulbous head. He looked exactly like the grays that you see on TV, but he was just this vibrant blue. His aura, his presence was that like of a shaman slash scientist slash professor, teacher, holy man, healer, all together. And he goes over and he picks up this box, and he has it in his right hand, and he takes his left hand and puts it into the side of the box. And when he pulls his hand out, there's this substance kind of free floating above his hand a couple of inches. And it's kind of undulating and moving around. It looked like that stuff that slimy stuff that the kids play with.
Right.
But it was blue, just the same color as he was, because he was just this electric blue, just vibrant. And this stuff again was blue. It had little crystal or little glitter flakes kind of floating around in it, and it's kind of undulating. And I really don't even remember him setting the box down, but he takes his right hand and puts it. He's only got 4 digits, so he takes his middle fingers and puts them up almost kind of like in a peace sign, or like the Buddha or Christ does in depictions of them. And his outer fingers, because again he's only got 4 digits, he takes his 2 outer fingers and folds them in. And when he does this substance again just starts spinning, and the faster it spun, the blueness and the sparkly things in it kind of dissipate on it, and it's rotating around it like, it's orbiting around it like the sun and, the planets and the stars and everything. And it's kind of started slowing down, and it turned into this like crystal pyramid, double pointed crystal pyramid. And I remember thinking to him, why are you showing this to me? I'm not a scientist. I'm not an engineer. This is something important. Why are you showing this to me? And he told me that I would know in time, or when it's time.
And was this telepathically? Because that's a lot of times what you hear. It's like,
yeah. This
talk.
was totally in my mind. He never moved his mouth or anything like that. This was totally telepathic. My next memory is I'm in this other room, and two of the walls were very, straight, normal walls, and the other one, the third wall, was kind of concave. And again, the walls, the ceiling, everything, very metallic, no seams, no bolts, no rivets. And there's this overstuffed leather chair in the middle of the room. And I remember thinking to myself how out of place it is.
Right.
And, right. And
you picked this up at IKEA.
Yeah.
You can see the aliens,
Right. And it looks comfortable, but it's not. So almost like it was maybe a false, I don't know, maybe like they tried to make me feel it comfortable, or
like it wasn't really a chair there. It just looked like that to you.
Yeah.
It was really like a stone crappy chair,
Yeah. It just, So I focus my attention to the wall, and I walk a little closer to it, the wall that's kind of concave. And what I thought was a solid wall, I could see through. There, it was like, a wall window, because, I mean, it's huge. It's, 15, 16 foot long and, 10 foot tall. It's just this big, huge window wall. And I could see stars and planets, and, it's like being out in the galaxy, this dark sky with all these just beautiful lights and stars. And I'm sitting there kind of in awe. And all of a sudden, this little craft just outside this wall window shoots past. And it gets 8, 9, 10 foot past me, and it stops and comes back, almost like doing a double take. And it's sitting right outside this wall window, and it's kind of football shaped. It's about 3 foot long, probably about 2 foot wide. It's got little lights on it. It's got little wiry things moving around and shuffling around on it, and antennas moving around, and it had like it felt intelligent, like there was an intelligence coming out of it.
I picture the interrogation droid from Star Wars. When you're talking about it, like that's what I'd be thinking about my geek brain if I was in that situation.
Yeah. And it sat there for maybe 30 seconds and shot off again in the same direction it went in. It was going in the first place. And my next memory is waking up in bed the next morning.
Which you did at that time when you woke up. You had no memory of it. And
Right.
the regression to
Yeah,
get
I
that.
get up, and the first thing I ask Alta is like, what happened and how did we get home? And, even if we were drugged or whatever, we would have woken up, groggy and,
Right.
druggy and, not feeling well.
Right.
And I don't remember any of that. It was like I had a clear head. I just did not know. And I knew we weren't drinking.
Right.
So
Did your friend wake up there with you guys too? Was she at your house, or did she wake up in her own home, apartment, whatever?
So, Chad pointing to me, I'll kind of pick it back up. In my case, in the case of, let me just mention me, if I might, first. Yeah. This will explain about our friend. So, I'm the first one to come to. I didn't wake up. I came to. I'm sitting straight up in my living room. I had a grass daybed in the middle of my living room. That's where I'm coming to, and I'm cross-legged Indian style, like I'm sitting right now when I'm private. My eyes popped open. I'm coming to with a very distinct memory of the in-between. There's no memory of coming off the street, no memory coming home. But clearly I have this full-blown encounter in the middle. Now, as that's all rushing through me, I can't begin to tell you how much I am trying to process in one moment. Because in all of that, I'm rubbing my arms, and I feel something in my upper arm.
Oh.
Now I'm so flipping out. I'm trying to keep my language clean. I am losing it. But I'm controlled chaos. Now, instantly, where's Chad? Where's our friend? Is immediately, of course, on my mind.
Of course.
Now, in my memory, Chad and our friend are not in my experience at all. You heard Chad's account about that regression. I'm not in his. Possibly our friend is with him, but we're not even sure about that.
Right.
So, in my case, I'm my eyes. Now I'm not moving. I'm just kind of plastered in that spot, rubbing my arm, flipping out. Where are they? I see a lump. I can see my bedroom from where I'm angled, and I see a lump in my bed. I pray that the lump belongs to me, but I only see one lump. Where's the other lump? Who's the lump? And oh my God. So I'm getting up and I'm heading towards the lump, and my bathroom is right there. So I beeline into the bathroom. I go through unbelievable crazy in the bathroom with this object in my upper arm. I come out of the bathroom. Now I'm in pure panic. Chad, where are you? And I don't yell that. That's certainly what's going on inside of me as I'm beelining for the lump. Thank God the lump is mine. It's Chad.
Right.
He's up, and he's heading towards me as I'm moving towards him. Now, again, we're both very controlled. I can see in his face, because he's going to answer all my questions, that he is clueless. And, right, he can see in my face, I'm losing my mind. Controlled, but losing my mind. Now, where is our friend? Our friend is missing. She's not there. We have no answers. We're beyond terrified. We're beyond terrified. So, just to move the story along, we choose the 2 days I'm off work. That's convenient, isn't it? That this happens to us when I'm off work for the next couple of days.
Well,
Chad's free floating. He's right. He's an entrepreneur, so he's doing his own thing. So he's free as he chooses. So we choose to hunker down, as they say, and we don't leave our townhouse. We don't leave it. We bury ourselves in and we wait. Where is our friend? Now, we're both back and forth with you caller. No, you caller. No, you call. And we're so terrified, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. And as I often say and try to help people remember, there are no book of rules, nor is there anybody to help us. So 2 days later, I go to work. She's at work. She informs me, and I'm positive now it's because of the age difference between us. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. She's handling this, I would think, like a 24-year-old would handle this. Much calmer and cooler than we were doing. In her case, she indicates she knows something happened. She knows she has no memory from 11 on that street corner until, in her case, it's somewhere between 3 and 4 in the morning. She's now been put back behind the steering wheel of her moving car. Her car is moving slowly. It hit a parked car, and it knocked off her rear view mirror. This is what jolted her too. The car is in a whole other section of the city from where she parked her car that morning. And the car is heading to Wolfie Boy's house.
Oh, jeez.
Right. Exactly.
So she wakes up driving her car to his house.
Exactly.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah. So she shares this with me. I am just beyond myself at how calm she is. She knows something has happened, and that's good enough for her. She's gone on now to go to college. She's gotten her degree in environmental science. She is, an amazing human being that we're still privileged to know in our lives. And she's had a son. She had a son. She got pregnant not long after this experience and has raised this amazing son who's in college now himself and, has gone on to what appears to be create an amazing life. But in our case, it's been a very different. Not that our life isn't amazing, but it has been a very
amazing
ride.
We do have
It's been a very different ride.
We do have a caller. I pre-warned you that I know one person definitely would call in, and that's Mr. Zach here on the phone line. You there, Zach?
Yeah, I'm here, Jason. How you doing, man?
Doing good. You always have really great questions, but keep it to one because we don't have a lot of time. One question. I know you always have like 3 really good ones, but try to just pick one really good one.
Yeah, I do. Alta, Chad, it's very nice to meet you both. Chad, I wanted to go back to the events you recounted during your hypnosis. My question is, do you feel that these entities who abducted you intentionally gave you amnesia of the events that you had, or intentionally just maybe planted it subconsciously in the back of your mind? Why or why not? Because the one thing I found really intriguing was when you were recounting actually the encounter with the blue entity, I believe that they said that they showed you something and they told you in time that you would understand on that.
Right. Right. Yeah. I do believe that they, did something to kind of not let me remember, but I'm not sure. You know, I don't know 100%. I don't know if it was just my, subconscious blocking it out because, it's not something normal, the everyday thing. So
I would say the safe money is they probably blocked your memory,
yeah,
screen memories, too. There's a lot of times
Right.
people report that they have false memories too of things that they put in there
Right.
to try to block it.
If I might add also, and thank you so much for the question
Yeah,
and calling
definitely.
in. We're so appreciative of your interest. I just will kind of throw out there also, because I've had nothing but time to keep processing all this. What in the world happened to the three of us if it is true that we were, in fact, as Chad recalls, orbducted by an orb of light? What does that do to the human body?
It's a good question.
Consciousness, what does that do?
Yeah,
And that's
the
kind of where
effects
my
that-
mind is.
Right. Maybe the effects of that could erase your memory. Well, thank you, Zach, for calling. I'm sorry I didn't have time for you to ask more questions because you always have really good questions. But the story is so interesting, I want to try to get as much as I can out of it tonight.
Oh, it's so cool, man. Thank you so much for allowing me to call in, and thank you so much, Alta and Chad, for answering my question. I hope everybody has a good night.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. Have a great night, bud. But yeah, I know we're running out of time, and like I said, this is something I definitely want to get you guys back on for more because there's so much more to this story. Where you're getting just a tidbit of this, what happened, and I want to make sure before we leave tonight that they get the information how to get this book. But you guys, you finding out, you feel like you had something in your arm. I want to talk about that just for a minute. Did you ever get it? You said you got X-rays of it. Did you try to get it removed? Like the kind of that was his name, Dr. He just passed away
Right.
recently, Lear.
Right. Right.
That used to specialize in taking these things out. Did you ever try to do anything like that?
Right. So, trying to encapsulate this very quickly, I made contact with Dr. Lear back in 2002, I'd say 2003, somewhere back then, after discovering a book that he'd written. I'm not very, as I told you, me and technology. But anyhow, thank goodness it was still pretty simplified. We were communicating email very briefly. He instructed me immediately to get X-rays. That's a whole book in itself, those X-rays, the experiences Chad and I were put through over getting those X-rays. This unknown in my upper arm, just to give you an example, chose to not take a picture the first 2 times. It took 3 times before it would allow a photograph of it.
Like just blocked
So-
out the X-ray, like wiped it?
Right. What you'd end up with the first 2 times is just a perfect X-ray of my arm. The object's just underneath the top layer of skin. It's easy to see
Gotcha.
in terms of if it's pushing out of the skin or if you touch it or whatever, it's
Right.
very obvious. So anyhow, the fact that it was just not allowing a picture. So that's what we went through with the X-rays. I got the X-ray, the first X-ray to Dr. Lear. He told me then that I had to get a second X-ray to alleviate artifacts. By the time I got
Right.
the second X-ray, for whatever the reasons are, Dr. Lear decided not to work with us. We were left kind of just stranded in that regard. So I absolutely had no idea where else to go with this. What I did get out of this whole experience were those X-rays, but I've never met anybody else. I've certainly tried over the years. I finally discovered, and Chad felt the same way, I feel, that, our interest was maybe not removing it any longer, because what started to come to me was, let's say whatever, if something put it there, they're not going to put me through all of this again to put it back.
Oh,
kind
that's a
of
good
thinking.
point. Yeah.
So again, I've just had so much time to process all this. So wouldn't you know, I didn't have it removed, and I ended up with the second one in my wrist anyhow. So
now you got another
who
one.
knows?
Oh.
Who knows?
In your wrist, really?
Right, in my wrist. That one, I have full memory of that experience. And at the end of the encounter, the experience, my wrist of the same arm that the first object's in, my wrist exploded in what I refer to as, it looked like a light bomb. There was no pain at all. There was no pain, but it was amazing light coming out of my wrist. I mean, so much that it just looked like light. And then I'm put back to bed. I wake up the next morning, I wake Chad up, and I say to Chad, Chad, I know I have another one in my wrist. And, you know, you can't see either of these with the naked eye. So it's been totally dependent on me knowing and then having technology to prove it.
Right. I mean, the X-rays would, you know, can show a little bit of what might be there, but in the end, you know, who knows what's there. Now, I know we don't have a lot of time left, and I definitely want to get you guys on again. One of the things I wonder, in all these experience, obviously the story's continuing for you guys. You're still experiencing things. I'm getting the hint. Usually these things don't end for people.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So far it hasn't.
So do you believe you've been more, you know, obviously they had to abduct you again to put that in there. So there's been abductions since the first one in New Orleans?
Well, just, you know, in regards to what happened with my wrist, Chad and I were in bed. We had left New Orleans. We'd moved to rural Alabama. We're buying a home, kind of out in the country. I'm taken out of bed one night after we go to sleep, and I'm put in my backyard. Now, I'm wide awake. Now, I've never, that I'm aware of, nor has anybody ever told me that I've ever walked in my sleep. So
Right.
all of a sudden, I'm standing in my backyard, and I'm having a full-blown encounter. And then at the end of that encounter is when my wrist appeared to have light coming out of it. And then I have no memory of being put back in bed. It's like my memory goes out from
It sounds like you're
watching
still,
my wrist.
You at least were abducted one more time if you're not still. I mean, if they can erase your memories like they did
Right.
to Chad, I mean, who's to say they
Right.
hadn't taken you before that instant in 1997?
Right.
Right.
That's children,
Absolutely.
you know. I mean, that's the common reports. Now, he got a regression. Did you ever try to get a hypnotic regression at all?
Right. So in my case, I paid somebody that is quite renowned, you know, is well known in this field, a lot of money, and it didn't work. And but I did have a very bizarre experience happen. That if there's not time now, if you ever care, I'll share with you.
Yeah.
It's hysterical and scary and crazy.
There's a lot of
But the
experiences.
regression didn't work.
I can tell the regression at work. That, you know, maybe say some people that it takes time. You got to get through the screen memories too, that they put up to try to stop you from remembering. You know,
Right.
some people are more susceptible to having the screen memories. Like Chad might be easy for him to go through regression, while you won't because you're more susceptible to having screen memories. You're the one that looked away when the UFO
Exactly.
came, you know, so like they are able to put in those screen memories or to kind of control you. I guess my final thought and question here before we leave off, and I want to make sure we get your book information out, is: are you wanting the experiences from them? Or do you feel they're on good, or do you feel they are negative, like this is bad? I mean, like, to me, if I was being taken against my will, to me automatically I rule you as not my friend. You know, so what's your feelings on this? Your gut, you know?
Well, as far as me, you know, who's not to say that I did not give them permission
That's a good point.
subconsciously,
Right.
you know, and during my experience, you know, I was in awe. I was never uncomfortable. I was never, you know, I have anxiety problems sometimes. There was no anxiety. There was no nervousness, you know, none of that. So, and I do believe that at least my blue being is a very positive, and I do believe this is something, you know, this thing that he showed me has something positive, you know.
Yeah, I get that, and I get that from what you told me, the experience, that it seemed like it was not traumatic as some other people's experiences with
Right.
the abduction. You know, and that's the thing. There's a lot of similarities between some people's experience, but the way people perceive it could vary quite a bit.
Yeah.
And understandably. Alta, for you, how do you feel about everything that's been happening? You know, what is their intention, or do you feel it's negative, good, what?
Well, again, I had a whole different kind of experience that we didn't have opportunity for me to share tonight. And in my experience, it was mind blowing, obviously.
Right.
And again, without you hearing the details of it, my take on all of this is, to be quite honest with you, and I thank you so much for asking. As far as I'm concerned, we've received much harsh, much worse, much more terrible kinds of experiences from humans over all of this than what either of us experienced in these encounters. So if I had to make a choice, I'm glad I don't have to, I think, but it's been quite mind-boggling what we have been put through just trying to get help. So it's quite interesting. It's fascinating now
like I said,
and interesting.
This is to me, as long as you guys want to come back, this is part 1, and we need to get you back on for part 2, and kind of take off more for what happened after that instant, because we really just touched the very tip of the iceberg with it. Even though it's an incredible experience with what happened in the French Quarter, it really is just the tip of the iceberg, your guys' experience for what I'm getting out of the book, at least. And I could feel coming from you guys. So I'd love to have you back on, and we take right off from there and talk about it more if you're up to it. We'll get you booked.
Yeah,
such an honor.
Definitely.
An absolute honor. We thank you so much for the interest.
Because I'm going to read the book, and I know there's more, because you told me, that stuff was edited out. I'm going to want to know more after I finish the book. So speaking of that, because we are past time, but it's fine. Where can people find Orbducted?
Well, yeah, of course, find us on our Facebook page, Orbducted in the French Quarter. There's a link there to go to our Etsy page.
I put a link in the description of the event page on Facebook there for people to go to it.
Great.
Also,
thank you so much. And, they can also contact us, through Facebook, and we can go through PayPal. Also, we will be doing a book signing October 19th in a very, very beautiful gallery called Gallery 2 on Royal Street in the French Quarter. She also has UFO art and different things too, so it's
open.
very
Please come visit.
It's a great place to do it, so
there's so much more to this story that you guys have. I feel so bad that my show's only 2 hours and that I couldn't fit more of your story in. But that's, like I said, we got to get you back on and talk more about it, because it's so interesting. The book is very interesting. People that are new to the UFO subject, these guys don't, they don't get into all the other alien theories. It's just about what they've experienced, and you can't prove it to anybody. But I know I have my experiences. I can't prove to anybody, but I know there's people that want to hear it. I want to hear your experience. You got to be open to the idea that there's things beyond our perception of reality. Thank you guys so much tonight, and like I said, I'll get a date for you guys to come back on again.
That'll just be awesome. We thank you. What a wonderful host you are, and your crew, and we just can't thank you enough for everything. And if we may, we'll just end it with, we'd like to shout out real quick to Leah Tim and her grandmother, who's very much interested in your show tonight, and all over the country, and we just thank you so much for being there for us.
Well, thank you. And again, like I said, I want to get you guys back on the show, because there's a lot more. Whoops, that's the wrong music.
No, but it sounds good.
I wrote it. Thank you.
Yeah, that was awesome. We like it.
Wrote this one too, the ending music. All right, guys, next Sunday, I don't know if we're going to have a show because my guests aren't sure if they can make it. And if they don't, I don't know if I'll have a show because I need like a 1 week break. I got school starting for my kids soon, so I got stuff I got to get taken care of. So we might be back next Sunday. I don't know. If not, it'll be the Sunday after that. We'll be back. No ITC Collective show, even if we do have a show next Sunday. We're going to save that for the next month. Again, thank you, Chad and Alta Dillard, for being on. Check out their book, Abducted in the French Quarter. I highly recommend it, guys. It's filled with high strangeness. It's the epitome of what this show's about, paranormal soup. You got a Bigfoot, a ghost, and an alien in in a soup bowl. Well, they got much more in their soup bowl than that. I'll tell you that right now. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Check out the show on the archives on Paranormal Soup's YouTube channel. Check, like and subscribe to us on there. Find us on Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup Facebook page. You can follow us and like us there as well. We will see you guys next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a great night.
It's better.
Mhm.